Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
Welcome back for another episode. I appreciate you tuning in. I get this question all the time. Got it the other day. Somebody's like, hey, why do you podcast? Should I be podcasting? And my answer is not a blanket, yeah, you should be podcasting. I don't know that everybody should be podcasting. But the question that people hit me with is what do you get out of it? What do you get out of it? And they're waiting for this magical, hey, look at this check I got. And I have to be honest, yeah, things have come from this. I've sold franchises from this. I've been booked to speak. I've sold copies of books. A lot has come from it. But the number one thing that's really come from it, to be perfectly honest, is relationships. I've met so many incredible people through this, and I don't know. I like to say this has opened doors for me I didn't even know existed. I know people across the world. And I don't mean that to be braggadocious. Those people are always there, but this has just kind of been an inroad for me to talk to those people. Whereas in the past, it might have been, you can't just go up to somebody, hey, say I'm Frank, you want to have a conversation with me. It's just, there's some meat to my life. So it's really the relationships, and that's really a wonderful segue to introducing our guest for today, Brandon Fong. Interesting character. I shouldn't say character. I mean that positive sense, Brandon. But he married his high school sweetheart, which I think is awesome, Leah. And he's on a mission to create a more deeply connected world. Before he was 26, I was still in school accumulating student debt. But he leveraged his skills of connections to become a published author, run marketing for an online education company with 250,000 students, 250,000 students. He's traveled to 23 countries with his wife. He's been featured on TV, and he's launched his podcast, Seven Figure Millennials, to become one of the top 2% global ranking in less than a year. Today, B2B founders hire Brandon to get his relationship podcast system to land more clients, build strategic partnerships, and just create greater impact. Brandon, welcome to the program.
Frank, super excited to be here. I appreciate you so much for having me join you today.
Well, you are perfectly welcome. Before we hit record, we were kind of connecting the dots. Like, how did we know each other? How did we connect? And you were on you've talked to a couple people that I know. Shout out to Tim Schur, which is another one of those just amazing people that I've met through this whole process. And Terry Bean is somebody that I've known for, like I said, 25 years. I still remember the conversation I had with Terry Bean. It was probably in 96, 97. And Terry was at my office. I was still practicing law, but running AmSpirit Business Connections. And he looked at me across the table. He said, you need to get on this email thing. This email thing is gonna hit. And I was like, oh gosh, come on, Terry, really? And it did, right? I mean, I wasn't kind of that old curmudgeon that said, no, I'm not going to do the email thing. I'm going to be old school. But Terry's always kind of been there with that kind of advice for me. It's like, hey, really take a good look at this. So you travel in good company, Brandon.
I appreciate that. Yeah, they're both great humans that I've had the pleasure of meeting.
Yeah. So, I mean, we got your bio here. You married your high school sweetheart. I think that's awesome. Talk about this relationship podcasting system. Because, I mean, again, that's what why do you keep podcasting? It's the relationships. I just meet so many interesting people, and some stick better than others. Some come in my life and come out of my life, but just it's amazing what comes from these things.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And I love this topic. So if I go back through my life and try to identify a pattern, one of the things that emerges is this concept of connection. And when I say connection, I mean connection in every sense of the world. I mean connecting deeper with myself, connecting with other people, connecting people with other resources. And so, like you said in the bio, I believe my mission here is to create a more deeply connected world. And I feel like I'm doing that in many ways. It just so happens that I believe that podcasting is the greatest expansion of that, because not only do you get to build relationships with other incredible hosts like yourself, you're building a relationship with your audience at the same exact time. And like you said in the beginning, the doors that this has opened, I look at my bookshelf and the people that I've looked up to, and now I get to text them and have conversations with them. It's just been completely mind-blowing. But before maybe we get into like how the whole relationship podcasting thing works, I want to, if it's okay, share a story about how my eyes opened to this entire experience to begin with.
Please. Yeah.
Cool. So I'll give the abbreviated earlier version. I grew up on the free lunch program at school. I was super embarrassed by the fact that my family didn't always have the best financial resources. And that, even though it was a painful experience going through that lunch line and typing in my student ID every single day and seeing my name show up and have it say Brandon Fong, $0.00. Now that I'm an adult and I look back at that, it was because of that I realized that I wanted to change and make things better for myself. And I'm so grateful that that happened. Several years later is when I met my first mentor that opened the doors to me for what connection really means and what it can do for you. So I was 16 years old, and I had the opportunity to compete at this at the state competition for an entrepreneurship business plan competition. So I come up with this idea. It's called the Sizzlin' Ninja Food Truck. Frank, get excited.
Sure. Yeah.
and so I come up with this idea. I'm super excited about it, and then I give my pitch, and I ended up taking first place in state at this state competition. And I was super excited. I was on a high for the next few days until the meeting where my advisor brought everyone together that had qualified to go to this international competition. She slides this piece of paper across the desk with the itinerary and all the stuff in it. And I'm flipping through it, and my heart sinks at the last page because it shows the cost of the trip is $1,080.40 or something like that. And I was, working a $7.25 scooping custard at the local fast food restaurant, and I knew that my parents wouldn't just write a check to me for that. So I was like, okay, well, I can't go on this trip anymore. But then my dad introduced me to my first ever mentor, Brenda Campbell. And he said, well, Brenda's a founder of a nonprofit organization, or the president of a nonprofit organization. He said, well, maybe Brenda can share something about how to build how to fundraise for a trip. And so she did exactly that. And she took me under her wing, even though I was 16 years old, even though my email address was asianninja221@gmail.com. But she showed me the ropes of how to connect with really high level people. And she told me one thing that absolutely transformed my life. And she said, Brandon, if you ask for money, you'll get advice. But if you ask for advice, you'll get money. And I know some people have heard that before, or if you haven't heard it before, the first thing that I heard when I said, I'm like, well, that sounds nice, but I don't really know what that means. But Brenda, instead of telling me, she showed me what it really meant. And so what she did is she said, Brandon, I want you to take your business plan. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce you to several other high level people. And I want you to ask for feedback on your business plan. And then after you've asked for feedback and they've invested in you a little bit, ask them if they'll be willing to support and donate for your trip. So sure enough, Brenda does exactly that. The next day I wake up and she's introduced me to like 5-10 people. And I keep doing this where I keep asking for advice on my business plan. And then they keep providing me feedback. And then they ended up donating to my trip. So $100 here, $100 there. 2 weeks before the trip, I'm $500 short. And Brenda says to me, Brandon, I have to introduce you to Kevin Kowalski. I can't believe I forgot to introduce you to this guy. He's a pretty big deal in the area. So I'm nervous to meet this guy. I give my presentation, and afterwards he says to me, Brandon, how much do you have left to pay for your trip? I'm like $500, and I'm like a few weeks short. And so he smiles and pulls out his checkbook, and I see him writing a little bit. And then I don't want to be rude, so I don't want to like stare at it, but then he puts it in an envelope and hands it to me and says, hey man, good luck. And of course, the first thing I do after I get out the door is I rip open the envelope and I look at the check, and there it is, a check for $500. And that was when I knew I was going to get to go on this international competition. And so I didn't end up placing at the international competition, but it was that lesson that I learned from Brenda, that you can unlock so much in your life if you learn how to build relationships with the right people. That there's the traditional way of doing things, and there's the way of thinking about who is already where you want to be, or what are the relationships that would create a massive domino effect in my life if I learn how to connect with them. And so that is kind of what set the seeds for what I'm doing today. But I'm just so grateful and so blessed that I have both incredible parents, and a first mentor that showed me the ropes at a very young age of what it takes to connect with people. So I can expand from there, but I've been talking for a while, so I'll let you jump in there.
No, that's amazing. We're not ending here, but we could end here, and that would be the perfect story. But it's so true, and I'm happy for you. I'm thankful for you that you had the opportunity to network. And if there's something that's not taught out there that needs to be taught, it's just the whole understanding of building relationships and making connections work. And so often people look at these connections, and people who listen to this podcast or people who know me know that I use golf as a metaphor. And golf is not about sinking little 3-inch putts, those shots you cannot miss. Golf's about taking a little white ball and hitting it over hundreds and hundreds of yards, one connection to the next, to the next, to the next, and eventually getting to where you need to be. Now, I think you said her name was Brenda. Brenda essentially, she gave you a lot of shots off the tee, right? And maybe some of those things led to other things going on. I mean, you can come back and you can, but I just think it's a fascinating story and a great lesson for, not just kids in high school trying to raise money, trying to have something. That's a great lesson for somebody who's 53 years old and trying to get another job. They're just so, I don't know. It's a wonderful, wonderful story.
Well, there's an underlying thing that I shared there. And have you ever heard of the IKEA effect before, Frank?
I have not.
Okay, so there's this, I might not get all the details correct, but they did this study on IKEA furniture, and they found out that people actually valued IKEA furniture more than other furniture in their house. So any idea as to why that might be?
No, but I'm going to look it up. I'm going to listen to you, but I will look it up to get all the facts straight. But
yeah,
go ahead.
You might find the details slightly different than what I'm sharing. I'll have to go
That's
and read
okay.
the original
That's
source
okay.
material. But basically, what they found is that people value IKEA furniture more because they had to build it. Right? Like they had to invest time, energy, and effort into creating something, right? That is why Build-A-Bear Workshop can charge $80 bajillion for a stuffed teddy bear that would cost them 20 cents or whatever. It's because the kid got to pick the bear, they got to pump it with the stuffing, they placed the heart in it, they chose a little, that's what creates these things. And so where am I going with this? I truly believe that relationships are somewhat similar, right? Like you have to create opportunities where you're investing in other people, and when they invest back as well, it builds the value of the relationship. So it's like you can it's that give and take, though. Obviously you want to make sure that you're supporting people and investing in them, but also I think that the part that is hard for lots of the giver types as well is being grateful for the receiving. And that's one thing that Brenda taught me, is like you have to show how grateful and how appreciative you are of these investments that people are making in you. And I will never forget that. I still write handwritten notes all the time. I send videos just thanking people or telling them how much I appreciate them, how much I'm thinking about them. And so that's just it's been an interesting thing for me to think about the IKEA effect and how it evolves. But I think the more that you can choose who you're investing in, and obviously investing in the right people, but then also being grateful of the what they're investing in you, it creates such stronger relationships.
Oh, I think that's awesome. I think those are great things. At this point, is it okay for us to talk about the relationship podcasting system?
Yeah,
I'm very intrigued.
100%. So building on the connection skill set that I have two sides to my brain that I'm very blessed for, that I view as kind of my unique skill set. Is I have a very analytical side of my brain, but I also have the heart-centered component of my brain. And I know you're very, I haven't read Go Giver, but I know the general concepts of it. But it's like, yep, you have to choose the right people to invest in, right? Like it's very important. Not that people have different values as humans, but strategically, it's really important to choose the people that have the criteria that you are really interested in working with. So when I talk about my podcasting system, I always look to isolate what are the key relationships that will have a transformational impact on your business. These could be high ticket clients. These could be strategic partnerships, the 1 + 1 = 11 kind of people, and getting really clear on who they are. That's not the rocket science. But the cool part is I have a process that I can scrape people that fit that criteria, and I can create a scoring system to prioritize the potential value of these relationships. So that's kind of like the analytical cold perspective. But here's my view on things, and this is where we kind of tie into the Go Giver. And here I am talking about a book that I haven't read, so correct me if I'm wrong. But basically, it's like once I know that there's strategic value on these people, my philosophy is always I can just love on these people, add so much value to them, and if nothing ever comes from it, that's perfectly fine. I chose some great humans to invest in. But on the other hand, if we can end up working together, that would create a massive impact on my business. So how do you create an ecosystem that has both the logic and the heart side of it? And that's where the magic connection method process or my podcasting system goes in. It's like being very strategic about who you're bringing onto your show, giving them a world-class guest experience, adding value to them, introducing them to other people that have been on your show, and opening the door to create a buying culture instead of a selling culture. People love to buy, but they hate to be sold, right? So like, how do you open the doors to those conversations? By adding tons of value. So that is just a high level of what happens. But I just think that it's really important to think about from the perspective of what are the most valuable relationships that you have. And as a podcaster, as you know, Frank, like I wouldn't be on here if I hadn't reached out to you, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here. But the problem with podcasts is, especially as you get on a successful show like this, you get inundated with requests. And it's like you have people saying they want to be on the show all the time. And, you know, you and I talked a little bit beforehand. Sometimes these people get on and they just kind of spam with their crap, and you have to like filter through that. And they're kind of trying to take advantage of the opportunity. But it's like you have so many things hitting you as a podcaster. You have to be the one that takes responsibility and be strategic about who you're looking at getting connected with, and building a system to consistently develop long-term transformational relationships with those people.
No, I mean, you're totally right. I mean, it's, you know, it's, they have to bring value to the show somehow. Yeah. You know, the audience, actual value to the audience, or maybe they're bringing an audience. You know, obviously if you're interviewing, I'll just think of a name. Well, Lewis Howes comes to mind. He's somebody I know. You know, I've got him on the show, and, you know, it was great, but I knew he'd share it out, and that helped me. And so that, you know, that's something, you know, I mean, there's lots of different things but you can kind of smell them out. It's, you know, this is episode 510, right? I've been doing this a long time. And you're totally right. You get people coming out, hey, he's really successful. Your audience will love him, but why? You know, well, they'll love him. You know, he's made a bunch of money in Bitcoin. Yeah, that's, you know, it sounds, you know, nobody needs to hear about somebody beating their chest. Right. I know we're coming up on time, so I'll let you guide me here. But I think I have this process that might kind of like when you open up an email and you have a blank cursor and you want to reach out to someone in an authentic way, how do you actually do that, right? And how do you actually add value to that? So I can go through that process if you think it would be valuable. Otherwise, I can share some high level. So I call this process the magic connection method. There's 3 parts to it. There's the compliment, the irresistible offer, and the no-oriented question. It's a very simple framework, but the reason why I thought about it as you were talking about it is because you said the keyword beating your chest, right? So many people think that as you reach out to someone, you need to show that you're this impressive person and how cool you are, when in reality, they don't really care about that as much as they care about that you care about them, right? And so like, I think it's one of those things where it's like when you're driving and you see a terrible driver and they cut you off. It's like, oh, there's all these terrible drivers, but you never realize that sometimes you are the terrible driver. You have, you know, it's like you've cut people off too, but you just forgot about it. And it's for some reason when you reach out to people, it's like that same mindset. It's like you like to be reached out to in a certain way, but think about the last time you sent a LinkedIn connection request. Did you maybe send it in a way that was authentic? Or maybe if you're listening right now, you could scroll through your LinkedIn connection requests right now. I guarantee the vast majority of the ones I receive is just something that someone has copy and pasted a bunch of times, or they said, hey, we see we have some mutual connections in common, or I see that you're wearing a yellow shirt. You know, it's just like, you know, nothing that's even remotely relevant. So how do you connect with people in an authentic way? So the first part is the compliment. And this is where you want to take the time to really get to know the person that you're actually wanting to connect with as a human being. Who are they as a human being? Not their accomplishments and all that kind of stuff. But if you're listening to this, one way that you could apply this is something I call the loved,
broad plus specific formula. And the way that you do this correctly is if you cannot copy and paste this message to anyone else and have it be applicable. It needs to be that level of have that level of specificity. So an example could be, hey, Frank, I listened to episode 427 of the podcast with, I listened to the episode with Tony Chapman earlier today. So I could say I listened to the episode with Tony Chapman and I loved when he was talking about XYZ. Thank you so much for sharing that. I really appreciate you not only creating that incredible interview, but here's the results that it got in my life. There's no way that could apply to anyone on the planet except for Frank. I took the time to care about him, to know what he, took the time to care about him. So that's the compliment. The next part is the irresistible offer. And again, it goes back to what you're talking about before. It's like, you have to figure out what's the value for the person that you're reaching out to, right? There's this quote by Dean Jackson: a compelling offer is 10 times more powerful than a convincing argument. A compelling offer is 10 times more powerful than a convincing argument. And I think in today's world, there's lots of rooftop networking, lots of rooftop marketing where people are standing on top of a table in the middle of a restaurant saying, this is what I do, pay attention. When in reality, it's like, you need to show that you care and then provide something that would be valuable for them to want to lean in. So the first ever email that I sent that was in alignment with this was after it was my senior year of college, but I reached out to this guy named Jonathan Levy. This is the guy where you said he had over 250,000 students. Like, I was just a college kid. I was a 21-year-old kid. I loved what he did. And I sent something very similar. It was like, hey, I listened to episode blank with Noah Kagan. This is the results I got from it. Went a little bit deeper on your site and found these 3 specific things that I think I could help you on. I want to do it for free. And if you like my work, let's figure out a way to work together. And if you don't, no harm, no foul, we'll part our separate ways. That one email turned into me running his marketing for 3 years. And he opened the kimono to like all these incredibly high value connections. But it was because I took the time to think about what Jonathan was looking for. There's this other quote: we can't read the label from inside the jar. Everybody inside of a business is inside of a jar. If you're sitting inside of a pickle jar and you're trying to read the nutrition label, good luck, because you can't see it on the outside. You need that outside perspective. So you have this opportunity as someone from the outside to look at them and say, what is Frank looking at getting connected to? What is the value that he's looking at providing to other people? And how can I figure that out and reach out to him in a way where I show that I've actually done the research on what is valuable for Frank, right? So that's the irresistible offer. And then the last part is the no-oriented question. And I think the easiest way to explain this is that like we don't like being backed into a corner, right? Like we don't like having stuff shoved in our face. We like the opportunity. It's like, open your LinkedIn again. How many people have asked for a 15-minute call? No one wants to jump on a 15-minute call with a stranger. It's like you have to build a relationship in the right way. So how do you do that and open the door to that conversation? And that's where the no-oriented question comes in. I learned this from this guy named Chris Voss. He wrote the book, Never Split the Difference. He was an ex-FBI hostage negotiator. So this dude is the guy that's on the phone with a lunatic in the basement of a bank that's about to blow up the whole place. Like, what do you say to that guy to make him not do that? And that's where the no-oriented question comes in handy, because Chris teaches that every single day we have a finite amount of yeses that we can give. Because think about it, every single time you say yes to something, what does that mean? It means you're giving away your time, your energy, your effort, your money, something, right? Yep. Whereas the exact opposite, saying no, makes you feel secure. It makes you feel protected. So instead of saying, let's hop on a 15-minute call to conclude this message, I would say something along the lines of 100% up to you, but would you be opposed to me sending over next steps for this to happen? Or if going back earlier to the irresistible offer, I put together a Google Doc with some ideas, some topics. That's what I said to you for Frank, because I know you listening, Frank cares about you as the audience. He wants to know that what is being shared is adding value. So I put together some ideas that I thought might be interested for Frank. And I didn't ever, I never want to force myself on someone. It's like, if they can see it's an absolute yes for me to come on, then great. But if not, I'm not going to force that on someone. So going back to that question, 100% up to you, but would you be opposed to me sending over next steps? I might use that to ask someone to be on my show, but that's the general overview. I know I've been talking for a while, but again, the compliment at the top, showing the time that you cared about them, creating something that you know is valuable for them, and then simply concluding with a question that allows them to lean in and say, yes, I'm interested in hearing more. And it's that simple, because the emails that are hardest for you to respond to, that are sitting inside of your email inbox right now, they're the ones where you have to go do the thing and get back to them and XYZ, and then you don't respond. Someone can respond to this message by skimming it, seeing there's a question at the end and saying, no, send it over as a next step. And even at that point, so I've been talking here for a while, but that's the whole framework.
No, this is totally valuable. This has been a great episode. Best way to get a hold of you through your website, sevenfiguremillennials.com. Would that be the best way to find you?
Yeah, you can go check out the podcast. The show is all about prioritizing your happiness, health, and relationships as we make our entrepreneurial dreams a reality. I say it as not the guru on top of the mountain. I'm still building my first 7-figure business and sharing what I'm learning along the way. But yeah, that's the easiest way. You could jump over, listen, type that out in your podcast app, and been very blessed to interview some incredible humans, and would love for you to come and join us over there.
Sounds great. I really appreciate your time today. I've got notes, and I don't normally take notes. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Frank. This has been a blast.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today, and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.